Good morning and welcome to our UBC Learning Circle stop motion animation storytelling with Amanda Strong from Spotted Fawn Productions. Today's conversation is presented in partnership with the Center for Excellence in Indigenous Health, and we'd like to thank the First Nations Health Authority for generously funding the UBC Learning Circle and allowing us to have these conversations. Before we formally begin, I'd like to acknowledge with respect and gratitude um, that I am joining you from the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Please feel free to introduce yourselves and the nation you're calling in from in the chat box. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Sarain Squawkin. I am the Learning Circle Manager. I am Syilx Okanagan on my mother's side and Hickory Apache and Belgian settler on my father's side. I will be the moderator for today's discussion, and working behind the scenes is Cynthia, our production coordinator, and Kira, our program assistant. They'll be working in the background through the chat. And finally, before we get into today's discussion, I will provide a gentle heads up that the topics covered may be emotionally triggering, and we would like to share some resources for you in the chat. And if at any point in time you need to talk to an elder, friend, counselor, or family member, don't hesitate to do so. And yeah, thank you. And we'll hand it over to Amanda to introduce herself.
Thanks so much, Sarain. Hi, my name is Amanda Strong, and I'm a Red River Métis artist, currently calling in from Sechelt territory on the Sunshine Coast in British Columbia. And I'm originally from Ontario, so I grew up in Mississauga, Ontario, and I'm a member of the Manitoba Métis Federation. So my mother's Red River Métis, and my father is settler, who is, I believe, Scottish and Irish. And yeah, so I'm really grateful to be here today. Thank you so much for inviting me into this space to share a bit about the work that I do with my company, Spotted Fawn Productions. So I'm going to share first a demo reel of our studio. So it just sort of encapsulates some of the work we've done over the years, and then looking forward to having a wonderful conversation with Sarain about the process, the journey, I've sort of got there, talk a lot about process and team, how that connects to sort of well-being and purpose, different things like that. But yeah, so I'm going to share my screen and show the work. Apologies for those who have already seen it, but yeah, this kind of encapsulates the stop motion animation that we've been working on since around 2012. So it captures clips from from over 10 years of different works. Here we go.
I'm always so amazed by your work. You and your team's work. It's always so just so beautiful and I love it and um always blown away every time I watch it. I'm like, wow, like so much work has been put into this and you can tell, right? Like um
Each project
and
is usually like several years at least.
yeah, yeah. With that, like how do you when you're working with your team and stuff, like how do you create like a meaningful community amongst your team member towards addressing that kind of long-term goal? Because I know, like you said, like it takes hours and hours to put into each film. Like how do you keep everyone motivated for that shared vision?
Yeah, I mean that is a trick and it doesn't always work out because I think not everybody can stay on something or the same thing for the that long. I think the longest project we've worked on to date is our recent one in Quo for When the Starving Returns, which is based off a short story from Richard Van Camp, and that one was about 7 to 8 years in total from when we first sort of started the conversation with Richard about that becoming an animated piece to when we actually finished it and brought it out into the world. So a lot of things obviously happen in 7 years, even for myself, and there's a lot of obstacles. But I think like whenever working on a story, so sometimes it's personal stories that I've worked on, talking about my family or my grandmother. I've worked on stories with my partner, Bracken Hanius Corlett. And recently, worked with stories from Leanne Simpson, Richard Van Camp, and our current film, we're working with Tsimshian journalist and storyteller Pamela Post. So I think one of the wonderful things about the stories that we're telling in the medium of animation and in particular stop motion animation, is that most of these stories, if not all of them, have a purpose and there's something important about them, whether you're Indigenous, whether you're settler, whether you're an ally. I think there's something about the work that we're doing that is different than just commercial projects that, might be more just for entertainment. Not to say they don't have any story or meaning, but I think there's a lot of people, or what I've learned over the years is that, sometimes people are looking for more than just a job that pays well and want to do something towards things that matter or righting wrongs. Because I think in our stories, sometimes we're talking about, challenging things and really trying to create space to talk about what's happened in the past, but like weaving it with the present and the future. And so I think, yeah, it's just we're really fortunate to have work that speaks to people and makes people feel good about what they're working on and contributing to sort of I guess a lot of people want to find out how they can be an ally with Indigenous people and stories. So I think this is a way that can build a bridge. In terms of like having people like individually like commit long term, not everybody is on a project for the entire time because production works in stages. So usually we're working on multiple projects at the same time because that's the only real way we can survive is, you might be in development of a project and writing something, and then you might be like animating and doing production of another, and then you might be like doing post-production. So it's kind of like a stagger system where, or you have a large project and a few smaller ones. So I think my goal is always to try to employ people as long as I can, for those who are looking for longer term employment. And I say that because I think of this work as like a family. So I'm not looking to just have people turn over every few weeks and always have to work with new people. I actually really enjoy working with the people that you know, really bond with and have worked with. So it's always nice when you can work with the same people or people, yeah, you've built sort of a really good relationship with over the years or over several projects. And I think that's something I try to tell people is like, yes, stop motion is very exciting and looks cool, but it takes a long time. So you have to really believe in the story and really like be aware of what you're committing to because it's not just a matter of pushing a button or it's not going to only, it's not going to take a couple days or a couple weeks. It's going to take years. So it's quite a long process and you have to like weave in and out of a lot of different things and obstacles because in our case we're also not commercial. We're not supported by larger studios or funding. I mean, we're very fortunate to have what we have, but like at the core, our work is independent and kind of trying to maintain sovereignty and autonomy over ownership of our stories and telling our stories our way. So you're not going to access certain funding by being, you're not going to, yeah, access funding when you're asking for those things. A lot of funding, they want to own it, they want to control what you're doing. So that does limit the sort of type of funding we have access to, and which is fine because I would choose that for sure over having more money. I think having the autonomy to make your own process and way of telling stories is way more important. So yeah, I think with people, it's just a matter of finding the right people who really believe in the story and want to
Mhm.
get behind it and like are aware that it's going to be some hard work and sort of like persistence and dedication to see it through. Because that's the thing, it's hard. You don't want people who are kind of going to bail or flake out partway through. You're trying to find people who want to see this through no matter how long it takes and kind of like yeah just getting it done and honoring the story at the core. So again, it doesn't always work out and like anywhere
Mhm.
there's always points where people part ways or people don't stay for the whole journey, but I would like to think we've been very fortunate to have wonderful amazing teams on most our projects where there's always a healthy amount of people who stick it through and like really want to help make the film.
That's so cool. Yeah, I know just when I watch your films and when I see the amount of detail going into it and just thinking about the different ways you have to go into a film. Like even when you have a film generally with just a camera, there's so much that goes into like, is the camera in the reflection? Is all this sort of thing? And when you have to think about it, stop motion, like you're the one who's processing the time and whatnot. And how does it feel to be on that end of like the spectrum of where like because in the sense you're kind of slowing time down in this story and then it's almost like in a way then you're kind of speeding it up again to see
Mhm.
it in real time, right? Like how does it feel to be a part of that sort of process within filmmaking?
Yeah, I mean it's painful but beautiful. And I when I say painful, I don't necessarily even mean in a negative way. It's just it's painfully slow. But I think there's such a magic to it and especially in a digital era and an era of AI and all these things, that's what makes, I think, this particular medium more powerful is, you know, you're really maintaining a core of handmade things and people touching objects and making objects from real physical material. And there's just something about that you can't emulate in a fully digital project or this don't even get me started about AI. But yeah, I think there's just something that captures the care and the love of people who are contributing. So people who are touching and making everything. Because that's the thing, there's tons of people helping on these projects. If anything, I'm not even the one fully making everything because my job is to build the foundation that makes the work possible. And so the amount of labor is like tens of thousands of hours of people making all these individually small things out of real physical material. And then you have animators, like physical people who have to channel and perform the puppets and essentially act. And you have to do that one frame at a time. So each day, if you're lucky, you might get, 1 to 3 seconds of footage for a full work day, a full-time work day. So that's like, moving the puppet and everything else that needs to move in that shot, one frame at a time. And so, yeah, it's just and there's something so meticulous and beautiful, but when you actually like start to feel and see the footage move, it's and you're like in on our newest, well, our latest film and our newest film, we've had the extreme pleasure of having the voice acting of Tantu Cardinal. And so it's just like so wild when you watch a puppet that took, 6 months to make and all these props and sets. And that all came from a story that took months and years to break into like a script and an animatic. And it's like this whole process of it starting with an idea and then it transforms into a written form, it transforms into sketches and all these things, and then it starts to become material and then it starts to move. And there's nothing like seeing footage for the first time when you're like, oh my goodness, that's like years of work and so many people putting all this care and love, and probably like, when you're making everything by hand and you're in the moment, it probably feels so weird. Like, what is this in the big picture? And that's my job, is the
Mhm.
big picture. My job is to connect all the pieces, all the people, and bring it all together and add sound and all those things to make it the actual film. But there's so much raw and like unfinished elements to that, all those years of work that at some point form and come together as the whole. And there's something so magical about that because, like I said, you can't really replicate that in live action. You can't replicate that in
Mhm.
digital animation. It's like
Mhm.
takes, yeah, it takes people who really care and are willing to sacrifice a lot of things to believe in that, because it takes years before you're going to see it. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, it's just it's such a magical, special thing that yeah, it's so wonderful when you get the right people together and especially, and yeah, to be doing that towards Indigenous storytelling, where
Mhm.
again, it's not just about entertainment or joking around. It's
Mhm.
like you get to do this process with like
Mhm.
and make a difference and like tell stories, hopefully that inspire people, whether that's with the stories or the medium of animation. But yeah, it's just like I said, it's not easy to get to the finish line of any of these projects, and I can talk about that too. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, there's something so rewarding and magical, and um, I can't do any of that work without working with an amazing team and community of people.
Definitely, yeah. And I feel like when just hearing you share about how each person has like touched and made a part of this story, and each person has kind of put a little bit of their soul into this project just as much as you and your whole team. And it just makes me think of like our oral history in a sense, like the amount of elders, knowledge keepers, and ancestors who have taken the time to um listen to those stories, but not only listen to them, but retell them to community, or even go out on the land and embody them themselves, whether that be going to those 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 areas where those stories are told,
Mhm.
or just touching some of the items that are being talked about within the story and just embodying that, and just hearing, like when I hear you talk about your studio and how everyone has it seems like just like 1 second takes like a full day's work.
Mhm.
That's like how our ancestors, that this has
Yeah.
taken like centuries, like
Yeah.
to get to where we are now. And the fact that we still know a lot of our stories is amazing, and just to think of like how your work is doing it in a different way for us to imagine them is just so it just warms my heart, and it's just so cool, and that kind of leads me into this next question of like how do you protect Indigenous stories and their intellectual property um when doing your projects?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a really important question, something that I've been really dialed in on for a while. And I wanted to, I guess, just circle back to something you said just before that around oral stories and because I think when I was first in school and like navigating photography and art and sort of starting towards my journey of animation, one thing I always struggled with was that I can't tell a story like A to B to C or like very linear, right? And that I've
Mhm.
always struggled because people are always like, your work is beautiful, but we don't understand it and it doesn't make sense, or because it's not following, a spoon-fed narrative or again, like a Western construct of what a story is and beginning, middle, and end. And so, for a long
Mhm.
time I struggled because I thought there's something wrong with me and like, why can't I see story like that? But
Mhm.
I think there's been a few really important people over the years and in my life who have helped to really, I guess, ground me in when thinking about oral stories and process, that it's not linear and time is not linear. And so I think I'm really trying to embrace that. And I accept that there's a lot of people who don't understand my films, and that's totally fine and acceptable. And it's
Mhm.
not for everybody, right? But I think I want to stay true and keep honoring a way of telling stories that is more cyclical in nature or working through like interconnections of things and yeah, weaving through in and out of time and space, and which I think is a big part of stories and how stories are passed on and how and concepts of time. So that's something that really for a long time I've struggled with, but I'm trying to embrace that because I feel like if I were to try to tell these stories and like strip them down and like try to force them into these box narratives, I don't think they serve and they're not honoring in the right way. So yeah, I just trust that there's something guiding me that helps to see story in a different way. And I think this medium of stop motion animation is such a wonderful opportunity to not be bound by those sort of constructs and that really allow you to go into different ways of seeing, imagining, dreaming, and sort of looking at how you can visually explore these stories. So I just wanted to mention that because I think it's really important and something that it's I think we are in a world where a lot of people will try to knock you down if you see things differently or have a different way of if your brain's wired differently. Like, so I think it's really important to trust that and to follow that and like to find people around you who support and nourish that. I think is
Mhm.
key for anyone who is struggling with that. Um,
Mhm.
when it comes to intellectual property, excuse me, I'm still getting over a bit of a cold. So if I cough, apologies. But yeah, the when I was so for my first few films, most of our funding is through like arts councils. So
Mhm.
very fortunate to have received a lot of support from Canada Council for the Arts, BC Arts Council, back in the day, Ontario Arts Council. So the good thing about those spaces is, they're supporting people who do have ownership over your story, right? So that's actually the only way that they'll support you is that you're the creator and you own the content. So when it came time to work on our latest film, Inquo for When the Starving Return, that was the first time we worked with a body like the National Film Board. And so a space like the National Film Board will have larger funding, but often will own the work in totality. So they become the producer and you can direct and make a story, but they'll fully own that property or that work. And
Mhm.
so when, this is 8 years ago, this is when I started
Mhm.
that journey. And it was kind of like, and Richard's story is not my story, obviously, but
Mhm.
there's like layers because there's the written story, which belongs to Richard, but then there's the
Mhm.
production. And I still couldn't understand how, well, not just the NFB, but like anybody like
Mhm.
that could own that project or that story. So
Mhm.
that is part of the reason why that length of that project took so long is because my goal was that my company became a majority producer so that we had more equity in the project than the National Film Board, so
Mhm.
that if there were any, like creative control decisions, like we couldn't be
Mhm.
out decided by something like the NFB, and that we wanted to ensure that we held a majority. So that was,
Mhm.
but then that meant I had to find the majority funding. So there was like but that really opened my eyes to, and I don't believe I'm the only one doing that work. I think there's a lot of people starting to challenge the archaic structures of contracts that these funding bodies are, when you start to go into these bigger spaces like broadcasters and certain types of funders, they're
Mhm.
the ones who try to, like, will have more control over work, but their systems of contract are and ownership are like really dated and don't reflect an ethical way of working with stories, especially when you're talking about Indigenous stories or other cultural stories that really should belong to community or individuals. So
Mhm.
that's just been something that's really important to me. And I think because I had that foundation of my first few projects and like funding them all through like smaller means like arts councils, that's all I knew. So I was like, well, what NFB? No, they can't own this. And like, so that became one of the things, right? And it's nothing against the NFB. That's just the way their institution is structured, right? And I think, again,
Mhm.
there's a lot of people kind of taking steps to challenge those spaces. And like,
Mhm.
Indigenous Screen Office is doing a lot of work around ownership and IP. So I think we're in a very interesting time that's shifting and
Mhm.
challenging spaces of like, yeah, just because you give funding, how can you own this? You can't own this.
Mhm.
So I think
Definitely.
yeah, it was something that was really like talking to other filmmakers who'd made films at spaces like the NFB where they were just even they're like non-Indigenous and they were just like even for them it was like it's like you're giving away your child. You spend
Yeah.
years on this project and you don't own it, and it's just all this, and then that's it, and then they're done with you, and they own it. So even from
Mhm.
like anyone's perspective of like how hard that is to dedicate your art form and all these years to not have ownership of a project was pretty
Mhm.
mind-blowing to me. So I think it just sort
Mhm.
of gave me some fuel to learn about yeah, how is it, why is it like this, and like especially with I think Indigenous stories, it's like that just doesn't even make sense. So, what
Definitely.
can we do to kind of make some of these people uncomfortable?
Mhm.
I've always believed like I have an Indigenous lawyer who's been really wonderful in like helping um, talk about these things. And, even though we're not at a place where we're going to be able to dismantle that stuff completely, I think we're in
Mhm.
the beginning stages of holding people accountable and like really going back and looking into those foundations and the ethics behind them, and why it's important that, yeah, Indigenous people own their stories, or just why that's important to talk about. And so that's really important to me and something that I want to continue learning about and advocating for moving forward.
That's amazing. I know, I don't think people tend to like hold people up like you like that, like in that sense of being the salmon. I always say like the salmon going against the current and whatnot and heading back to the fresh water um and I feel like that's something, right? That's what we need. We need more people going against these rigid colonial systems to create more opportunities for the rest of the community. And I feel like we even just saw that recently with like heated rivalry and how Jacob Tyranny um, brought it to the States. They said no, and then now brought it to Crave, and they gave him a lot more creative freedom,
Mhm.
which was cool. And just even an example like that, just showing how when you're limited, it can take away from the vision of the artist, right? And
Mhm.
even just you speaking about that with some limitations with some of these opportunities that seem like great opportunities because of the big name, but then so much underlying limitations built within that, and just understanding how even though it was a challenge for you, it also sounded like it was an opportunity
Mhm.
to learn and grow within the industry to better equip you for future projects. Do you find that it's almost that reframing sort of thing? Like I don't know if that's like a film like pun, but kind of looking at something like when you see it as a challenge, do you guys, as you and your team, just see it as like, okay, like let's see if we can see this from a different lens and how we can make this work for both of us, or even just see like how to overcome this challenge. Because like, do you ever find that like even just within your team, you're like, oh, I don't see it, but someone within your team's like, no, I think we could do this. Like, how do you guys even communicate that amongst a team? Like, I know you kind of spoke a bit with your lawyer and whatnot.
Mhm.
Like, I know sometimes it can be limiting, when
Mhm.
you face so many of these challenges and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, like over the years, I've tried to really not burden, um, the creative people on our team with stuff like that. Like right now, we're making a film that we don't have all the funding for, so we're trying to figure that out. And it's like nothing's gonna stop us because when you really believe in that something needs to happen and be told, and you don't. And you're like, it's terrifying because you don't know if it's going to work out or if you're going to find that last piece. So yeah, sometimes the team gets a whiff of like, oh, do we have what we need to do this? But I think, there's sort of a select couple of people that I work with on the producing or on that side who would likely hear a bit more about those obstacles and like how do we navigate those? How do we proceed? And sometimes for me, sometimes I just really like a challenge and there's always going to be a moment of like, oh man, I feel torn of like, what am I going to do? Or I feel like giving up right now, or I don't know if I can do this or take this on. But, being around one, a good partner, and family, and then obviously your family at work who, when you're kind of going down and feeling down and starting to go into moments of doubt, they help ground you and remind you like, look, we've been here before, there's gonna be a way. Like, and yeah, like, because those are moments of reality. Like, I think they're important to talk about because
Mhm.
it's so easy to want to give up in a lot of cases, I think, for most people, right? Because there's always obstacles when you're trying to do your art and have limited resources or funding. And I think it's important to talk about because I think, things most people face, and we don't always have the tools or good people around us. So it's so important to align yourself with, people who aren't just gonna like let you fall and like not support you. It's like and you try to
Mhm.
be there for each other when each person's
Mhm.
like maybe having a moment of struggle or like how are we gonna do this? And
Mhm.
so yeah, like I think sometimes that's where I can rise in a good way is like I'll have a down moment and kind of like have to like go underground and root myself in order to come back up with
Mhm.
like a positive outlook and a solution or a plan, right? But I always
Mhm.
have to let myself feel the low and like
Definitely.
sort of that challenge in order to like sort of rebirth myself in that moment and be like, okay, well, we've come this far and I
Mhm.
really believe in the work that we're doing, so it's worth fighting for. It's worth pushing through this and trusting that hopefully the universe or creator is like out there waiting, hopefully something else is going to happen that will get us through this challenging time. So that's totally part of it. It's not all
Mhm.
rainbows and everything's all set and it's all good the whole time. Like that's not at all
Mhm.
how it is. It's mostly challenge. Um,
Mhm.
and I think what I've learned over the years too is it matters what you want to stand for, right? Because sometimes when you are verbal or outward about these things, not everybody likes that. And not everybody likes somebody who has a bold opinion or challenges something.
Mhm.
So that it can work where you get a reputation of like someone who's difficult to work with, especially as a
Mhm.
woman, like, oh,
Mhm.
but I think I would rather stand for things that are important and fight for things that I believe in and have some people not understand that and view me as whatever they want. It's important, uncomfortable work. And I'd rather do that than be silent and just
Mhm.
conform to what people want us to conform to, right? But
Definitely.
it's scary because you're like, oh man, they could blacklist me, they could whatever because I'm speaking up about this. But I'd
Mhm.
rather do that and I'd rather stand for something than be silent about like stuff you believe in. I think it's terrifying, but I think it's important.
I feel like that speaks volumes to just even like being a person, to have that sense of vulnerability to speak up when you need that support. And then also reaching out to your community, and I think that's I don't know if I find it as communicated as much amongst people. Like I think since we see a lot of maybe inauthenticness on social media, but we don't see a lot of that vulnerable, raw sense where you're like, I need support, I need help.
Yeah,
And it's not that you need them to fix it, you just need them to be there, right? Like you need them
yeah,
to maybe spend the day with you and we're just looking out at the beach,
yeah.
and that gives you that recharge, like what you said, where you're able to dig your roots in deeper and then grow bigger.
Mhm.
And which also kind of speaks to that, how it's it sounds like from what I'm hearing is like you're reaching for those values that you have, and you're reaching for those those things that are true to you and your character and what you want to do within your own purpose, right? Like, and which says something, like that's what brings out real art, in my opinion. Like that's what kind of gives you that sense of like, wow, okay, I'm doing this. This is what I'm doing. And I think that's what probably why people gravitate towards your art and comes to your team, is like that sense of community, right? Um, which is cool. I love it. I love just hearing how tenacious you are and grounded. Um, and I think it's great to hear, and it's refreshing. It's refreshing to hear how real um your story is, and I'm happy that we're able to just even talk about it. And that kind of leads into our next question is, what has been your inspiration for getting into film, or what are some inspirations for film? I know you kind of spoke about Richard Van Camp.
Mhm.
Do you also take other inspiration from other Indigenous artists?
Mhm.
You also spoke about having some stories from your grandmother. Was there any other inspirations that kind of just, okay, these sort of things are need to be said through my medium of film and stop motion?
Mhm. I mean, some may know this, but I carry a badge of rejection from film school, which I'm very proud of. So I wanted to go into film when I was in college, but wasn't accepted. But I was very lucky to go through photography and illustration. So I went to school for 6 years. And at that point, the film program invited me, but I told them that they had already rejected me. And I think I was just done because I'd had 6 years already and didn't want to go into school, go through more school. So I think having the foundation of camera and like analog film, and even like I was the first year that learned like digital and analog film in photography, so felt very lucky to be in this really weird hybrid year before they fully transitioned to digital. And so I
Mhm.
think a big part of my relationship has always been with the lens and the camera, because of photography, and really stop motion animation is just a sequence of still images. And so I think I became very, and then illustration program is very foundation of arts and connects to a lot of the other mediums that I think come into stop motion, like drawing and foundational things and painting and material collage, all of these things. So it kind of gave me these really great foundations of understanding. Um, and then I think that just naturally led to moving image, because I think even in my still images prior to kind of making animations, there are still like creating worlds or character, or, not necessarily just photographing a landscape or something. It was always creating something beyond what we just see and kind of from our eyes. And so, um, I think I really became interested in the idea of moving image, and why I really love stop motion is again the foundation of photography and lighting and all those things, and controlling things by one frame at a time. So that and I think um, that what at that time I was living in Toronto, and started to meet a lot more people in the Indigenous community, was doing a lot of work with my grandmother, and that sort of started my connection to, and this is like over 20 years ago, like working with community in the city, and started doing like facilitation of arts programs, and yeah, just kind of getting to know the urban Indigenous community in Toronto more. And I think over time that sort of led to me wanting to know more about, like, wanting to tell my own story. So one of the stories that's very personal is Four Faces of the Moon. That's about my grandmother and my mom's family and the languages they spoke, their connection to the buffalo hunt, and just that loss of language over time, and how my grandma's grandfather could speak in six indigenous languages and I don't speak any. And so that film was deeply about like trying to understand how that loss came, and really kind of digging deep into the languages, into the genocide of the buffalo. And I think from there, really found a way to kind of t tell this story, which was very much through transcending time and portals and things like that. And that kind of just led to other relationships with, like, yeah, Leanne Simpson and Richard Van Camp. And so I think it's just there's people who will either I'll reach out to somebody or somebody will reach out to me to collaborate. And I think usually I just want to get behind a project that I can connect to and I really believe in. So that's kind of usually how, what I'm inspired by to tell in terms of telling stories. And I always also want to make sure I'm the right person to tell a story. I am a very, I'm a mixed person, so I want to make sure that, that I'm just because we're Indigenous doesn't always mean that we can just tell any Indigenous story just because, like it's about ensuring that if you're collaborating with another person or community story, you want to ensure that they believe you're the right person to do that and you're going to do it in the right way. And that's honoring their community first, not myself. When I work on Richard's or Pamela's stories or Leanne's stories, yes, we're building the process of the film, but at the core, the story belongs to their community. And that's what I always try to uphold and honor at the center of all of that. And yeah, it's just, and I also was very fortunate to have like a more industry experience where I was asked to work on Molly of Denali with Atomic Cartoons, which was a very interesting experience. And normally I don't do that type of work, but I believed in the story. And so even though there were sort of foundational things that were challenging about working at a company like Atomic, which is not a bad company, but they're not Indigenous at their core. It's very few Indigenous people working there, and they're operating on a well-oiled machine of production, right? And so, however, one thing I will always remember is how the people felt working on that show because it's like one of the only shows out there that's, talking about Indigenous language, teachings, culture, where everybody felt this sense of like love and just gratitude for getting to work on something like that. Because for one, and you talk about purpose, right? And it's like, so rare to find content in that world of like industry and commercial arts, animation, film, where there's projects that actually hold that value system or so yeah, it's I think it's amazing when we have those rare opportunities for shows like that or that's why I'm doing the work I do with Spotted Fawn is because I want to keep hopefully being able to tell these stories. And those are the things that I think a lot of people find purpose in when they work on.
That's so cool. I think um it's amazing just to hear um how your inspiration can change and grow over time, and then also just having other opportunities to work on with other production companies like um is it Atomic?
Yeah,
Did I say that right? Yeah, Atomic.
yeah.
Yeah, animations. And just seeing how you can kind of do something a little different and just see how um other animation studios are kind of creating something similar in the sense for their own vision, but how you can take what you need from that for your studio, right?
Mm.
Like, which is cool. And um, I can totally see that being a great way to inspire yourself um, to learn and grow within for yourself as a director, but also your studio, which is really great. And I think the stories that we gain through the Indigenous community are, like you said, are very much need to be honored and to be able to know that sometimes that hey, I don't know if I have the capacity for this, but I believe in your story. Like that, like I think that also says something too, like um that we need to not just be taking and taking and taking just because it's an opportunity, but examining something of like this is I don't know if I can reach the vision that you want and but I'm happy to support in another way, like
Mm.
which is cool. Um, our next question here is what got you into the film scene? So you kind of did speak about you've tried film school and whatnot. What were some of the things that got you into even photography and illustration? Like, were there anything in your childhood that you kind of noticed, like, hey, like the way I'm playing is a little different than most kids? Like,
Yeah.
was there any signs that you kind of like reflect on and thought like, oh, okay, that was a sign, like.
Yeah, it's hard to say because actually my brother was in my opinion, true artist. I still believe that. Unfortunately, he didn't go down that path, but I was actually more into athletics. And so it's an interesting story because it's maybe not a typical story, but like I I had divorced parents and so my gravitation towards the arts was actually at the very end of high school. And leading up to that, I was so dialed in on like athletics and medicine and like possibly going to go to school for kinesiology or homeopathy or all of these things. I had scholarships for um like several programs and universities and my grandfather had passed and I don't know if it was like a couple years before kind of having to choose which path I was going to go, but I somehow grabbed all of his cameras, his analog cameras, and he had all these photos of my grandmother when they were together when she was young and all these like negatives. But something just told me to grab all these cameras from his house when he passed. And so, and I didn't know why at the time, but it kind of started this weird interest in cameras and photography and film. And I kind of randomly, at the very last minute, applied to Sheridan College with no scholarship, and got into the photography program and completely threw my whole family for a loop of like, I'm not going to go into sport, medicine or kinesiology with scholarships. I'm going to take this general photography college class that I'll have to pay for. And I think everybody in my family was quite shocked and like really didn't, I actually was like looked down upon for a while, unfortunately, like by my father. And he was like, just couldn't believe that I would make a decision like that and thought it was stupid and like I was choosing a really bad path. Why would I do this? Right. And so that was disheartening, but I still trusted that something was telling me to go that way. And, I think even for a while, my mom was like, oh, interesting shift. But
Mhm.
to this day, she'll always assure me that she's so glad that I did that and she completely understands that this is what I was meant to do. So,
Mhm.
yeah, it was, it wasn't necessarily like, I mean, I think I always loved art and animation and was fascinated by things, but didn't really practice it. And like I said, I kind of always looked at my brother as an artist. And something just sort of shifted me that way. And I think it was just sort of this building journey from that start of like choosing photography and then, like wanting to evolve and go into the illustration program and kind of keep developing different art skills, and which eventually kind of led to being self-taught and working with different mentors in moving image and kind of animation was really that space to bring all those tools together.
Mhm. That's so cool.
Yeah.
I like that you just knew, like you had
Yeah.
that feeling and you went with it. I think I think we tend to overlook that feeling quite a bit, and I think that's how we lose out on just following that true path. And it's funny, like I don't know who it was saying or whatnot, but I think it might have been one of an elder in my community that's saying like a lot of the grandmothers or old people in the community would see these sort of these talents and whatnot within our children at a young age. And they wouldn't try to put them all into fishing, right? Like just
Yeah.
because that was a life skill we should all know. But it's like, yeah, you can throw around a rod here or there if you need to. But it's like, no, you look like you're a hunter, or you look like you're really good at basket weaving and stuff. Like, let's honor that, right? Like,
Yeah.
and if you're transitioning out of that, like it's kind of bringing like that sense of like, okay, let's transition you to something else. Like maybe
Yeah.
you're working on that a bit more and you're wanting to expand on something else. And um so it's cool to that you're also even bringing back that sense of like intuition and knowing your own path and purpose within that. So that's cool. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Um, and kind of coming back to that film process, like how does the concept of film start? Like you kind of talked about how it's usually your team kind of creating some of the settings and then also like the puppets and whatnot. Like how does it start? Like do you usually create your character or do you have like this vision of what your like do you first draft it on like a notebook and say like this is how I kind of want them to look?
Mhm.
Um, do you also pass off some of that creative freedom to some of your animators who are or artists who do the puppets to expand on that? Like
Mhm.
what goes
Yeah.
into that process?
It's a lot of people who help, and I think the foundation is always in the script. Or and then again, if we're working with another, like whose story it is, so whether that's Richard or Pamela or Leanne, in a way, like to me, they guide the foundation of like what the key description of something is or reference images to ensure that we're not like, making something that's not authentic or appropriating something in any way. So I think like there's always that stage of working with whose story it is and elders or community people to give us a palette to work from. And then, yeah, often it'll be like an artist or an art director on our team who would take those reference images and then between myself and if there's another sort of co-director or community member would always usually be involved in like feedback for those initial stages. But the writing is sort of first and the writing informs everything. So like the script has to kind of um outline like how many characters there are, like what things
Mhm.
actually need designing. And then design would start in a very rough stage or like again just sort of loosely trying things based off of reference images or direction and then slowly evolve towards something with a bit of color or texture or render. And
Mhm.
then the interesting thing in our world is then that starts to inform a puppet, a physically three-dimensional thing. And so
Mhm.
sometimes what we'll actually weave back and forth between that process. So they might start sculpting a head out of clay that is
Mhm.
like their best guess of like from the 2D image. And then sometimes we'll even like take that sculpt and put it and paint over that sculpt. So it's kind of like because it's more realistic or like it's gonna capture the dimension and the tone of everything. So it can be this back and forth process of flat two-dimensional art that then sort of informs this three-dimensional sculpt that then goes back into a two-dimensional form that is like referencing the dimension of that sculpt. So there's like many steps that we go through. And that, yeah, we're always kind of like asking the community people involved who need to approve that or say like, yes, that feels good. Like right now we're
Mhm.
with Pamela Post's story, it's like we're actually making her father's character. So
Mhm.
it very much matters because he has a specific jacket that he wore as an 8-year-old, and like we need to
Mhm.
make sure it looks like him. And so there's a lot of important details like that. Um,
Mhm.
So yeah, I think the script and the story, and then it's a process of like who is the right people to guide what the things need to look like, and then that's usually a team of people and
Mhm.
artists, and then the puppet makers. So we're kind of going back and forth with that process of feedback and direction and how the art evolves, and then eventually that becomes the physical, like the 2D reference becomes what they try to recreate in the puppet form.
That's cool. It's
Yeah.
cool to even just kind of imagine how that works. Like, like to start from just words, which are the story, right? And then
Yeah.
start with an image, and then that image becomes like that 3D, like just seeing that is like, whoa. But then also just kind of going back to like how you were saying, even how you envision things, like it's not quite as like it's not really like a linear process. And I
No.
had this conversation with a friend about, she asked me, she's like, how do you envision time? Like, do you envision like the past in front of you or behind you? And I didn't envision both. So it's funny how, like, because you know how you were saying they weave and interconnect and all that stuff. And I was like, I don't know, it kind of feels like it's orbiting, like it's all around me. And she's
Yeah.
like, oh, like that's so weird and different. Like I never thought of it like that. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know why, but I've never thought of that question either. But it kind of makes me think of that, like where the the story's over here and then it's coming down and then the 3D is coming down, and maybe they'll align and maybe they won't,
Yeah.
but they're all kind of going around. And that's kind of what I envision when you share that, which is cool. And maybe that is that which is also another thing my sister mentioned, was like that blood memory, right? Like
Mhm.
about sometimes even the way I communicate, like even in a text, I'll say what I should be saying at the beginning at the end, and then the thing
Yeah.
that I should be saying at the end at the beginning. So then she's like, you talk like Yoda. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I'll just switch it at the end. It sounds like
Yeah.
I talk like that. But it's cool. It's cool how that I know we always hear about it, like blood memory and all that stuff, but just kind
Mhm.
of embodying it and just realizing and reflecting, wow, okay, like maybe we actually do have that, and we just don't notice it. And
Yeah.
not to shame it, right? Or judge it.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think yeah, process is just in trusting follow you're kind of not following I don't know, you're following something unexplainable, and it's
Mhm.
scary and terrifying and hard to convince some people of that concept, but I think you have to. Like
Hmm.
there's always something beyond us, I think, guiding like and helping connect things. So for sure, I get that.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah. It's really cool just to hear about it. I feel like film is just a great way to somewhat like describe it in a sense, like, and I think just having this conversation with you and hearing about your journey along with the process and just how you work amongst your team just
Mhm.
really embodies that. And so I find it very interesting. And a lot of our audience does. And one of the questions that we have here is, do you know any platforms for young animators who are interested in submitting like creations or getting into the industry, or wanting to honor that journey or purpose themselves?
Yeah, I think um I'm also doing some work and have started like a symposium called Shifting Forms. So it's meant to be a space of like bringing, free accessible talks, workshops, like bringing, it's currently in Vancouver. We're trying to see if we can do it in Toronto as well, but it's about like bringing together voices and well, it's centered on Indigenous um, sort of creators in moving image art, interactive art, and animation art. So yeah, and I'm really trying to, I think there's a lot of opportunity and space in film in particular for Indigenous people. And I think there's definitely people working in animation, but I think our, our voice in that sector compared to film is like a little less right now, but I do believe there's a lot of people who want to make animation and certain types of art like beyond just sort of films and live action. So I think there's like a
Mhm.
good pendulum swinging towards like opportunity for that and creating space for Indigenous creators in those sectors. So I think like
Mhm.
always, just looking for different workshops, talks, trying to like reach out to people. One of the biggest things I've learned over the years is like all someone can say is no or not respond, right? But sometimes you
Mhm.
might, if you just reach out to somebody, you may never think they'll respond. Sometimes they will. Or I find like there's a
Mhm.
lot of people who really gravitate towards the work we're doing, want to help, and like, some people working on really big things who aren't Indigenous, but again, just want to help or like, can we help or support in any way, like you've said? So there's always good people out there, and I think you just have to keep trying to find them. There's lots of different like grants that you can write. So it's just a matter of like having an idea and a plan and like reaching out for help if you need support on how to like apply for funding. But it's
Mhm.
mostly about like networking and aligning yourself with people, but also just like doing that work yourself. So if you're really
Mhm.
interested, we're in a good era of the internet where you can learn things online for
Mhm.
free as well. So it's like you can, try to do things just at home with a phone or an iPad or something to start, right? So I
Mhm.
think there's always
Mhm.
ways that you can kind of start on a small scale or just to understand the foundation of things. But always like,
Mhm.
yeah, reaching out, looking for different opportunities, seeing how, or like see if you can work on a different project to get some experience. Like there's sort of a lot of different avenues to try to yeah, but if I think number one is just if you believe in something, try to find people who believe in it just as much as you. Always show your passion and love and care, and you'll gravitate really good things in people, I think, when you're coming from a good place. And
Mhm.
just trying not to give up, even when rejections happen, when challenges happen, when all the things happen that make you feel like it's not possible, just don't give up.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah. It's good to, like you said, just get out there and just start with what you have. And I think that's one thing that um a lot of our people who are interested in entering a different field or even younger generations is there's so many things that you just have to just start, right? You just have to fail before you succeed, right? And I
Yeah.
think that's one thing that we need to remind ourselves of. Failure isn't doesn't mean you're done, right? Like that's just the
No.
beginning, right? Like
It's actually like I would say mistakes and failing, if you even call it that, are I feel where you learn your biggest, hardest lessons that will
Mhm.
feel not good in the moment, obviously, but
Mhm.
some of the biggest, best takeaways or things that like have become in some ways my superpowers have come from those failures and mistakes and allowing myself to go through that and again, going through that rebirthing process where, yeah, let yourself feel it. It's gonna hurt, it's hard. But that's gonna turn into a huge advantage eventually. Like if you look at it
Mhm.
in the right way, there's always a silver lining. There's always a way to take those hardships and turn them into something that you can use in a good way.
Definitely, yeah. I think we heard that at the Golden Globes with I always forget her name. The lady who played Ruby in K-pop Demon Hunters, Rejection is Redirection.
And Richard Van
Um,
Camp said, rejection is protection.
yes,
I like that
yes,
one
yeah.
too.
I like that one
I have
too.
it
Yeah,
as a sticky note on my computer always.
yeah, yeah. That is very good. I like
And
that
I
one
still
too.
get rejected a lot too, like even now,
Hmm.
right? So it's part of it, and it always hurts, like,
Hmm.
but not to let that define you.
Definitely. Yeah, yeah, that is so true. And we have another question here. One of the participants are just asking, given how long the projects take, do you ever struggle with figuring out which stories to work on? As someone who gets excited about working on a lot of different things, they wonder if you talk as a team about what to undertake and or if you have different methods. So you kind of talked about how you have a few going at the same time. Um, do you have also like a sense of like some project management experience to have them kind of going along at the same time, or what sort of tips do you have along there? Or are there any software like that you like to use to say
Um,
like this one's in the process, this one's near complete, this one's just starting,
Google
so you don't miss anything
Sheets,
like that?
Google Sheets all the
Yeah.
way. No, it's not a big tool like at that Atomic Cartoons and probably in most other studios, people use like project management software like what used to be called Shot Grid, or I think it's called Flow now. But
Mhm.
it costs a lot of money. A lot of those things are often, on a user basis, and can even still be beyond our capacity financially to actually
Mhm.
use them in a functional way. So right now we actually spend a lot of time. So there's like a couple people that help on the production side, so production management, line producing, who help
Mhm.
me juggle. There's like the project level and the studio level. So there's all the activity of like the entirety of the studio, and then there's like per project what's happening. And, a lot of that does live in my head, but I do absolutely need help and like work with others on my team that like help um manage like a lot of the elements, like how to schedule our teams, or yeah, like writing grants for upcoming things. So sometimes like what we actually end up being able to do is unfortunately hinged on funding. So sometimes the project might take longer to get the funding, or maybe, yeah, we've had rejections or whatever that could delay the start of something, but we really believe in it, so we're going to apply again, kind of thing. Or so it's kind of definitely a big juggling act that can be very overwhelming. So we try to build
Mhm.
a bunch of different sheets and trackers that help us see the big picture of things and where things are at. But yeah, that's like you need several people to kind of help. Well, depending, obviously, you can do it yourself depending on how many projects you have going on and such. But yeah, it's a very important part. And I'm actually now teaching at Emily Carr Animation, just part-time, but like
Mhm.
that's something I'm really trying to like talk to my students about, is like the management and structure of like or being organized, and like it's not about just like being so rigid, but like having a
Mhm.
plan, especially in animation, is very important, or else it can get a bit chaotic and be hard to like juggle everything. So,
Mhm.
though I'm not always somebody who wants everything structured, and I like things to be organic and allow, breathing room to grow and shift naturally, but I do think like having that sort of at least backbone of infrastructure of yeah, just like a plan, even if it changes, and it's likely going to change.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
important to go through those exercises. So, yeah, I think that's a really important part, a hard part, but something we're
Mhm.
still learning about. And I was able to gain a lot of tools from a place like Atomic. And,
Mhm.
those are some of those transferable tools that I've been able to think about how to use some of those things and cater them to how we want to work at our studio.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I feel like that's also like a great way to highlight that form of delegating, and then but also um take away some of that, like you don't have to think about that process each time and each time
Yeah.
like that same email that you write to every single person, you can have a template and then
Make a template.
rework it a bit, right? You don't need to, at least it has like the meat and bones, like, and then you can adjust like a few of the stuff. So, and I think it's great that you're speaking to that because I think we also don't hear a lot about that, like where we
Yeah.
need a little bit of structure with room for growth, right?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
yeah.
With each project, I think we try to look at the previous project and find, efficiencies or ways that it could run better, like from a lot of, not just the tracking level or project management level, on all levels, right?
Mhm.
The creation level, the like we try to take a look at like how you can improve and what you can do better. And like what
Mhm.
went well, what didn't go well. Like, trying your best to listen to people's feedback of their experiences and how what we can take from that moving forward.
Mhm. Yeah, cool. That's great. I like that. And the next question is, can you share on the techniques of stop motion and if there has been any new developments in your process or setup? This person's a Dene stop motion animator and would love to learn more from Amanda one day.
Nice. We have a couple of Dene artists working with us right now, so never be afraid to reach out. We're always looking for, a database of Indigenous artists, especially in animation, because if there's ever a project that we have space, like that's always our priority is to hire Indigenous artists first. So just wanted to put that out there to not be shy. We're still a relatively small studio compared to most, so. Yeah, but the stop motion process, I think, my first few, I didn't know a lot because I didn't go to school. I haven't worked in the industry for anything based in stop motion. So much of what I've done has been through learning, making mistakes, surrounding ourselves with people with experience, but not always just with experience. It has to be the right person because not everybody they might be a super talent, but if they have an ego, it's not going to be a good fit for the type of work we're doing. Because I think part of the space we're trying to build is not necessarily one of linear hierarchy either. Like, I think we have a more collaborative, non-hierarchical nature to the space because we're not trying to become like an industry model. We're trying to embed, indigenous ideologies and like ways of working into what we do. So we're not, kind of just falling into the industry box of like how other spaces function. Because I
Mhm.
think there can be toxicity to that sort of some of those models. And so those are things we try to, it's not really the goals of our space. But yeah, I think like each project again is a learning opportunity for me, for my team, where we try to gain tools and transferable knowledge from whoever we've been able to bring onto that project that is able to kind of move forward with each project. But I think at its foundation, we're just always trying to level up, and like with each project, it's kind of hard to go backwards. We were wanting to always try new things and, um, finding the right people or combination of things to achieve that. And we work with schools a lot, so we have worked with like Emily Carr students and labs to solve problems and do like technical exploration of
Mhm.
technology and stuff in the use of stop motion. So I think more than anything, the tools and technology keep evolving. So it's
Mhm.
it's kind of doing our best to be aware of what's possible or like how to use those tools in an ethical way with the type of stories that we're trying to tell. But yeah, I think we're doing it on a bit of a bigger scale. But I think like for stop motion, the cool thing is you can do that at home by yourself. So to
Mhm.
always kind of like start there and like build yourself up, but whatever it is that you want to do with that medium or with your stories, just reach out to people and kind of build yourself out depending what path you want to go.
Mhm. Thank you. And our next question is this person's just saying, thank you so much for the presentation and conversation. They're really enjoying just hearing you speak and just hearing your story. But they're wondering about making art can be lonely work, especially in light of the struggles and rejections that you mentioned. Can you speak to the gratification of people's enjoying your work and seeing its impact on people's lives?
Absolutely. That's a super important comment. So thank you for that. Because sometimes in the hardest moments where, like I think, I am a neurodiverse person. I'm very vulnerable. Anyone who works with me knows that, I'm not afraid to cry. I'm not afraid to show my vulnerability when things are hard. And sometimes people have, used that against me. But I'm not afraid of emotions. I'm not afraid to be real and raw and like, because I think that's human. And I think it's important that, and that I don't get upset if someone's upset on my team. I think we try to have like a policy of like being safe with our emotions. And if you're having a hard day, whether it's related to work or not, and so, yeah, like my partner, for instance, and a couple people on my team are the ones who will kind of see me at my most vulnerable when things are feel like a struggle or challenge or there's a rejection. And again, like sometimes it's like can feel like the pressure of everything and like how to sustain this and like are we going to have funding for next year? Like all these bigger things can sometimes weigh you down where you start to think about all of that and it makes you just want to collapse or give up because it doesn't feel possible. Or yeah, like I said, a big rejection can definitely trigger that often, or a big complication in a project and now there's a financial sort of gap or whatever it is. Those things can really, money unfortunately can cause a lot of pressure and stress, right? And so I think some of those reminders when you're in those moments, and that's why having those good people and family around you to remind you why you're doing what you're doing. And there are times where I've gone to talks or people have wrote us emails to express the impact of the work and how it's inspired them or changed something in them. And so I think like those are those moments where like, yeah, I feel like not good and really down on myself and I want to give up. And then those are those moments that I remember why we're doing what we're doing. And I think why people are at the studio because it's not just about me, because my work is not solo, my work is not individual, my work is a team and a collective. And I think those comments of impact of what this work is doing for people is just important for my team to feel like they're doing that same work that matters to people. So even if I went to a talk and one person came up to me to say that they felt seen or they felt like that means everything to me and that's worth it. That like it doesn't have to be tons of people that you're changing, but just to have someone feel represented, seen, inspired, or impacted in a good way. Because, yeah, we're talking about the challenge part, right? But I
Mhm.
don't want to undermine that those beautiful things are what keeps us going and not giving up.
Mhm. Definitely. We have to honor the brilliance, right?
Yeah.
Oh. And this one's kind of probably going to be our closing question because it's a little bit of a large one. So we have a few people interested in seeing your films, so they were wondering where they can see them, and then also they're interested in having you either come talk to their school or work with their community. Is there an email or would you prefer referring to your website for contact on future projects and whatnot? And yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you for those interested. And, I think I hit a point during COVID, I got pregnant, I had a child, and was finishing our last big film. So I'd hit this like I'm sure like most of us where there is this several year thing of not going anywhere, talking. And so I feel like I'm just finally, in this journey of motherhood to a really beautiful boy with autism, which has been such a big part of my current learning journey. I'm just finally feeling like myself again and like excited to sort of share and talk to spaces. So I think like now is a really good time where I'm in a phase of like teaching and sharing and talking. So yeah, you can always, anyone can reach out to us. So in terms of like speaking or workshops or community engagement, I don't know if you can type this, Serene, but just in the chat, it's just spottedfawnproductions@gmail.com. So and I think that's available on our website. And then our website is www.spottedfawnproductions.com. So some of our films are there, and like a few of our films are online. Like our latest one, Inquo, with the National Film Board of Canada, is available online through the NFB. Other films like Bedaubin, For Face of the Moon, you can just search those. So those are online with CBC or on our website. So yeah, there's quite a few films. It's just mainly the newest one that is not finished yet. So that won't be online, but I think everything else for the most part is online. And yeah, like we're always interested to hear, and like I said, we're really shifting towards like this symposium and like finding ways to bring people together, finding ways to have these important conversations, workshops, all that sort of stuff, and really trying to create space for Indigenous artists working in the moving image art sector and animation sector. So yeah, just reach out.
Great. Thank you so much. I know everyone has been enjoying uh the conversation we've been having, and I know I've been like I was so excited to finally get the chance to speak with you and learn more and yeah, just I always enjoyed it. Just learning more just on your website and then now having the conversations just kind of full circle. So yeah, and do you have any closing remarks before we end the webinar?
Well, firstly, thank you again so much for having me here and yeah, just giving me space to share and thinking of our work. And I just want to always take the opportunity to acknowledge my team. And, the team is different over the years, but yeah, teams of the past, teams of now, who, like I said, are really the true artists and support system behind me that makes the work possible. So I just always want to acknowledge the phenomenal artists and people, the storytellers that trust me and our studio to bring these stories to life. And yeah, I just want to share my gratitude because without that, there's no work. And yeah, I just want to acknowledge the wonderful people in my life that make things possible. And yeah, hopefully, this has been inspiring for some, and I hope people can find their way with their path and dismantle some systems and never give up. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you. It's been such a pleasure to learn more and then also just hear about your journey and how you've tackled the challenges but honored the brilliance along the way and just made it super inspiring for myself and everyone who has tuned in. And yeah, so I just want to hold my hands up to you and say thank you. And yeah, thank you. And just before we end this webinar, we'd love to bring your attention to our upcoming webinars coming up. We have sorry, I need to make my screen a little bigger. Um, Medicine Wheel goal setting in integrating traditional and Western frameworks for success with Dr. Chet Montague. And that's on January 29th, next week. And then we have Making Space for Indigenous-led research at UBC. That's on February 10th. And then we have the second part of that, which is the information session, Roots for our Indigenous Partner Research Cluster. And that's on February 12th. And all of those webinars are at 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. You can sign up for our webinars at www.learningcircle.ubc.ca and feel free to sign up for our newsletter. We're always sending out our latest webinars for you to tune into. And yes, so thank you for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you all at our next Learning Circle. Lim Lim, thank you.
Thank you.